You lead by example, you inspire others. So I have lots of female students who write to me, we are so inspired by your story and everything. Say it's hard work, go look beyond the discrimination, fight it, but also fight it in a positive way, which doesn't drain you and it allows you to progress.
Good morning and welcome back to a new episode of the World Class Leader Show. And today I'm super excited to have with me Carole Nakhle. Is the founder and chief executive officer of Crystal Energy, an advisory research and training firm in the UK. Drawing on a unique breadth of experience gained from working with a wide spectrum of stakeholders, she specializes in interplay between economics, energy, governance, and geopolitics. An internationally respected voice, she has consulted with major energy companies, governments, and policymakers, specialized think tanks and organizations globally. Carole has lectured in academic institutions, and also she was born in Lebanon. Mm-hmm. And she earned her doctorate from the University of Surrey. In 2017, she received the Honorary Professional Recognition Award from the Tunisian Minister of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energy. In 2020, she was awarded the Fellowship of Energy Institute and featured on Energy Council list of top female executives in the global energy industry. And in 2021, she was the CEO Monthly Magazine named her as the CEO of the Year in the UK. Congratulations and welcome to the show, Carole.
Thank you very much, Andrea.
So, Carole and I share the same industry because I've been in the energy industry for many, many years. So your name is a name in the industry because you are a global recognized voice and speaker, as I said. And also you are one of the, I just mentioned, one of the most important, CEOs and female CEOs in a quite male-dominated industry, which is still a little bit of that. And also you have, I didn't say, but you have an experience, a career working for Statoil, for Eni, in the World Bank. How did you get to where you are right now, which you are the CEO of Crystal Energy?
First of all, I have to congratulate you for being able to pronounce my surname. If there is something
we tried that before.
If there is something that has been holding me back, perhaps I say it's a surname, but my name means palm tree in Arabic.
I see.
As you said, I come from Lebanon, and for me, this whole journey of I was born and I grew up during the civil war in Lebanon, and we witnessed all its atrocities. We were in Beirut, and to be where I am today in a Western country and then leading an organization with a global brand name, that for me is a major achievement. And I'm really grateful to everyone around me, starting from my family to my friends and colleagues who have helped in supporting that. But I also like to highlight my background because I think when you grow up in a civil war-torn country, you learn how to live with risk. You learn how to live with uncertainty, and you have to be able to adapt very quickly. So you may have the best plans, but actually you have to ditch them as soon as the conditions change.
Of course.
And this kind of preparedness to the unknown, to facing the unknown, and then to adapt very quickly to this kind of level of uncertainty, I have learned it during the Civil War, and I've carried it throughout my personal life and also throughout my professional life. And it kind of pays off because you always say, what's the worst that can happen? You take risk, and if you are really passionate about the subject, I'm very passionate about energy. How I got into energy, it was pure coincidence. I want to do a PhD in energy, in economics, but I want to specialize in a certain area. I walked into the economics department at the University of Surrey. I opened a door by mistake on my left-hand side. It was full of men. I was like, oh, what are you doing here? They said, we're studying energy economics. So it got me intrigued, like why there were so many men. What was it about energy? And I got into the subject. I fell in love with it. I specialized in some very technically challenging topics such as taxation of oil and gas. And then throughout the year, you start branching out. You worked with different stakeholders, so I had to understand what does it mean to work with an international organization such as the IMF or the UN or the World Bank? How do they function? With government, with decision makers, what are the challenges that they face? Because when you're fresh from the university, you have certain ideas, but then you realize that the real world is very different. You understand what are the challenges facing decision makers, policy makers in particular. And then you learn also the business side. What are the main drivers behind certain strategy, why they want to behave in this way, why they want to go in this country and not in the other. And also I had the opportunity to work with academic institutions. I'm very proud of my connection with academic institutions because that is the best place where you can impact the career decision of graduates or those who are just embarking on a new journey. Exactly. And that gives you lots of satisfaction. And NGOs and think tanks, they are fantastic to deal with because they approach the same issue from another angle. So that's like the whole journey that got me where I am. And I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. And with Crystal Energy, it's my main source of pride because we started from nothing, literally nothing, with perhaps and no capital available because we immediately signed the contract as soon as we started. And now we are recognized globally. Of course, we're not the big company, but we have a name we are really proud of.
Tell us more about Crystal Energy.
So Crystal Energy was the result of me asking, what can I do to work with all these stakeholders that I love to work with? So I had the privilege, and I'm really happy of all the organizations I worked with, including ENI or previously Statoil, which is now Equinor, and academia and other, especially parliamentary advisor here in the UK and the House of Lords. But I wanted to do something that would allow me to work with a wider range of stakeholders, and also without being constrained by certain parameters set by the institutions on you. So I want to have the freedom and the flexibility. And I thought I tried so many things. Why don't I try setting up a business? And what's the worst case? The business goes bust, and then I go and apply for a job somewhere, right? So I thought it was worth trying. Instead of being it an idea, let's give it a try. And that's how we started. And we started taking on projects from clients. So we never really promoted ourselves as doing like subscription-based because we didn't want to do something giving the same information to everyone. We knew that certain things require a very tailored approach, especially in our area of expertise. You cannot develop a model to one government and give that model to another government to apply, or the same thing for company. So this is the kind of approach that we used. We grow slowly but surely and tailor advice to various stakeholders, particularly government, investors, financial institutions, companies, as well as the broader stakeholders. And on top of that, we thought, because we learned from the experience of dealing with other organizations, training. So you go to a government in sub-Saharan Africa. They want you to draft legislation for them, for the energy sector, for the extractive industry, because we also cover mining.
Right.
And then you give them a perfect model, a perfect legislation, but they don't have the capacity to implement it. And I'm telling you this because from my own experience, I went once to one country, and that country had a new draft legislation that they wanted us to review. And there was a table there I couldn't get my head around. How do you calculate the taxes? And after searching and talking to those people, I realized that they had a consultant coming from Europe. He gave a presentation. They saw the table. They took it and they put it in the legislation, but they didn't really understand how it is implemented. And this is where we thought that the best advice you can give should be coupled with the right training so that you support the execution and the implementation of that advice. So this is where training came to the picture.
Understand.
And we also like to do research. So we get requests, for example, from international organizations or think tanks. They want us to collaborate on a certain topic. And this is where we develop that research aspect. So Crystal Energy is about advisory, research and training in the field of energy economics, policy, market developments, and geopolitics.
And knowing, you don't know, some of the people in the audience might know because it's not the first time I bring it up, but I work in Africa for a number of years because I, as well, coming from the oil and gas, I'm familiar with the challenges, but also what these countries need. And I think the point of training to me is very interesting and useful because I think one of the things that governments, organizations, especially in underdeveloping countries, are looking for is capability.
Absolutely.
So they can execute. It's not just paying people from or foreigners or from Europe or the US, etc., for what they're looking for in terms of information, but it's what to do with the information. So
exactly.
I get it. Now, I'm interested. If I look back to what you said before, you're coming from a country that has been under civil war, and that sounds like it really shaped you personally, and I suppose it shaped as well your mindset, your attitude. And the uncertainty, I think, can we say that dealing with uncertainty, it became a thing for you, and then become an entrepreneur in a conservative industry, as it is energy, was a result, is a function of your personal experience? Is that potentially true?
It played a role, definitely.
Right. It's not
and the
only
attitude
yes.
that I wanted to try.
Right.
Yeah, and we give it a try. It's a big global industry, but I never thought that starting from my own kitchen in London, in a small flat in South Kensington, will end up branching out globally in a short period of time with a small team. But we work together, me and my colleagues, we just followed whatever we believed in. So there is a risk-taking attitude. There is also the ability of adapting. And I give you an example. We went once fully prepared to give training to one sub-Saharan African country. And it was 2 weeks packages. So we were there in the country for 2 weeks and we prepared everything over a few months so that we go and we train those people. When we arrived on the spot, we realized that actually, so what we prepared was for this level, but they lacked all the basic things that you need to be able to develop the more sophisticated approach. So on the spot, me and my colleagues had to redo the whole package that we had without panicking, without, being angry or upset, and we adapted. The same thing when you have a client suddenly changing their mind or an opportunity emerges before somebody else would see it. So all this kind of agility, yes, it comes from me as a character, but also the knowledge of the sector. Yeah, so that is very important. So you understand things. You have a feel. That's what I tell people who come and work with us, let's say analysts or interns. We say you need to develop this kind of intuition so you can feel where things are going. And I remember, I give you an example when the war erupted in Ukraine, and there were lots of people predicting a major energy crisis, and that oil price will jump to $380 according to one publication. But you just, if you know the industry so well and you've studied the history and you understand all the dynamics and how it filters with economics and everything else, you realize that was not going to happen. But you had to be brave to go and say it publicly that I don't see that happening, you see. So all this having this kind of also confidence in what you know. Yeah, it's not about just an opinion, because everybody has an opinion in the energy sector as in any other sector.
Yes.
But also building that opinion on serious knowledge and understanding of the sector, plus the personal attitude, gets me to where I am today.
That's brilliant, fantastic. Tell me more about the future of energy. I don't necessarily need to know more because I'm familiar with what's going on with the industry. But for those people, they are not at the moment so much familiar with the future of energy. We all know about the net zero targets, etc. What you see, what's your perspective about where the energy industry is going right now?
It's very interesting because we have to distinguish between what is being said and what is being done. And a lot of what is being said is often political rhetoric. Very ambitious targets are being set, and there isn't enough honesty and transparency. We're not having an open debate. It's not about defending one source of energy against another. At the end, we deal with all sources of energy. And it would be too simplistic to focus. If you are a business like ours, it will be too simplistic and wrong, in my opinion, to focus on one source of energy because we believe in substitution. That's how markets work. Markets are in competition.
Yes.
So you have to understand all sources of energy. So it's not about defending one side. But I feel, especially if you are sitting here in Europe or in North America, you have electricity 24 hours a day. You have your car or the taxi or the public transport available, and you don't have to worry. You get ready to go to your job within 20 minutes, no problem. But what about more? Exactly. What about more than half of the population that is living in dire poverty, that they don't have this luxury? So whatever we are talking here about climate change and the future of energy tends not to resonate with people who are struggling in more than half of the world. So we have to take that into consideration. We have to take into consideration past trends. When you look at the energy transitions that happened in the past, what we are trying to do today has not been done in terms of scale, in terms of speed, and in terms of drivers. We are here forcing the energy transition. It's not happening naturally.
Yeah.
And therefore, whatever targets we are setting tend to be disconnected from the reality. And think about those that are rich in hydrocarbon resources in Africa and elsewhere. They are not going to say, you know what, to save the planet, we're going to keep them in the ground. They want to produce them because they need the money to invest it in other sectors. So when I take all this more, I would say, complicated picture into consideration, I feel that yes, we are moving towards a greener, cleaner energy future. But for those who believe that fossil fuel are going to be dead within the next 10, 20 years, they are not
not realistic.
It's not realistic.
Yeah.
So we have to think about it more in terms of complementarity and not substitution, because substitution takes decades to happen and it needs much more stronger drivers than what we have today.
But do you believe that the entire conversation about net zero is because the impression is things are not moving as fast as they should, is not a thing anymore, or is not perceived as with the sense of urgency that the society is asking for, but governments, organizations, they don't necessarily have the same level of urgency to drive that forward?
I would say yes and no, because we did see, first of all, we have to acknowledge that we went through over the last 4 years, I call it a souffle of crisis. We started with COVID, an unprecedented crisis, right? A crisis like no other. And its impact is not over. The economic responses, the policies that governments introduced are going to stay. They have an impact for many years to come.
You're still paying the price for it.
Then we had the inflation, right? Then we had the geopolitical problems with the war in Ukraine. And now you have Gaza, all this.
And all the supply chain.
Exactly. And the tripling, the energy crisis.
Yes.
Gas prices in Europe increased by more than 700%. So that was a big shock to the system. And we saw governments in Europe and elsewhere changing their position. So while they were condemning fossil fuel subsidies in poorer countries, they did exactly the opposite to what they were preaching. And households today are poorer than they were before all these crises happened. So they start to see, now hold on a minute, I'm paying too much for what I was told is going to be an easy ride or a cheap ride. So yes, we do sense this kind of hesitation, and the biggest evidence is COP. The United Nations meetings. You see how COP28, the tone has changed. Yes, they are saying we want to transition away, but I thought all along that we were already transitioning. But at what speed and by when?
Yes.
So you do feel it on both sides, the government and the consumers. And I also want to add companies themselves. So you do see energy companies, the oil majors of this world, also revisiting some of their strategies and their targets. Not reversing, but toning down the enthusiasm that we saw before all these crises.
Understood. Makes a lot of sense. All right, so let's shift a little bit more.
We can talk a lot about energy,
exactly. But let's shift a little bit more into the role of leadership today in energy. So I'm an advocate for changing, I would say, the leadership in the industry because, the transition that we are facing, in my personal experience, it does require, too, a shift in leadership, meaning we need to change probably the way our organization work around the future because it's an industry that is changing, wants to be closer to the new technology trends, meaning there needs to be more flexible, more considering not disregarding the risk that the industry is facing, but also be much more agile in the way that people in organization work, less hierarchical, less command and control. So I'm an advocate for changing that because I still believe that is a need for completing the transition also from a leadership standpoint. You are one of the top leaders in the market, and as I said at the beginning, is still in a very male-dominated industry. What does it mean, for you today, be a CEO female in an industry like energy? Maybe it's really exciting. So I really would like to hear your...
I come from a family I had 2 brothers older than me. So while all along I saw the challenge of being a woman, I don't want to say I enjoyed the challenge because it was pretty tough on many occasions where immediately there was certain judgment made about you just because of your gender. But I think my title doctor surprised many, but I can list endless cases where I was with a colleague on equal level when we went to certain countries and I was treated like the secretary or, the receptionist. And I don't know why this kind of categorization is not to diminish the secretary level, but they could not see me as, an equal partner.
Interesting.
But I looked beyond that. I felt, either I have to focus on those and just feel sorry for myself or do something more, take a more proactive approach. And then, first of all, lead by example. show people that I'm not going to grow a mustache to be taken seriously. I am who I am. I have brain, and I do have, all this qualification with my degree.
Yeah, of course.
But also at the same time, I set up a group called Access Women and Energy in 2007 with the aim of giving an equal platform to men and women. And it's not to talk about women's rights. It's not to talk about how great women are or the challenges facing women. I wanted to give an equal platform to men and women, where they come, they sit on stage, they debate energy issues with equal authority. So the gender doesn't matter anymore. And to do that, we had to actively look for other women out there. And there were many. And actually, I had to rely a lot on my male colleagues to find us other female. So you either you take the challenge, either you start feeling sorry for yourself and feel like you are not able to do anything about it, and you talk badly about it and you just complain, or you can be more proactive and turn it more into a success story.
Wonderful.
So you lead by example, you inspire others. So I have lots of female students who write to me, we are so inspired by your story and everything. Say it's hard work, go look beyond the discrimination, fight it, but also fight it in a positive way, which doesn't drain you and it allows you to progress. But I tell everyone that in oil and gas, yes, we have come a long way. And even I did not start my career 50 years ago, but still, when I started my career, I would be the only woman in the room. So things have changed drastically. Yeah. For the last 20 or even 15 years. But I tell everyone, the real change will happen, and I'm sorry I'm going to upset my OPEC friends, when I see more women sitting at the table at OPEC meetings, and not as journalists, but as decision makers. That's when we see, it's a shame that for an industry which is more than a century old, actually much longer than that, we still have this kind of, we have to think about men and women. So it's time to move beyond that. And I want to add to something you said, Andrea, it's not just the energy transition. Another change is happening that will make access to everyone with brain power, an opportunity to give them that opportunity, digital technologies, artificial intelligence. This is really an eye-opener because it kind of flattened the hierarchy in organizations. Geologists used to take 30 years to run a platform or to become major decision makers. Now that time span has shortened, and we should take that in consideration as well.
Yeah, such a great point. Yeah, that makes a huge difference in terms of how developing the future of leaders too. Mm-hmm. And what are also the future skills that are needed in the industry. Definitely, it's such a great point. Now, if you look back at your career and what you see right now, what advice would you give maybe to up-and-coming talents, male and female, about to succeed in this industry looking forward? Because I know there is a gap at the moment because many people, as industry leaders, we probably lost some of the talents after COVID, but also after all the tech revolution about all talents, all engineers, they want to work in tech, fancy organization, the Amazon, the Google of the world, because they're much more interesting compared to an old style industry. And despite the change the industry is facing, there's still a little bit, in my personal opinion, I might be wrong, inability to attract talents. So what does it mean for us to consider could be a leverage for people, for organizations to really attract the next future leaders?
Look, definitely I have seen changes in the priorities of the younger generation and their interests. And they are not looking anymore, or at least not all of them, I cannot generalize, but from what I have experienced, not this kind of job for life where you are stuck with one organization and then you live for the next 30, 40 years and then you retire. This is not something they can relate to, many of the people I'm saying. But at the same time, I see a little bit of, if you want, a reduction in the appetite for hard work. Not to dismiss it, but it's just the attitude has changed. And maybe because they do have the flexibility to move jobs, but although competition is still intense outside, but I can feel a difference in the attitude. And also with students, because I teach at universities, I see how things have changed in the attitude. But that's why you have to think about it also differently. So I encourage people who come, for example, to work with us, when I interview them and they say they definitely like energy, but they enjoy doing something else at the same time. And I encourage them to explore both. So you don't have to choose between A and B. And today, again, technology allows it. The structure of companies allows it. Zoom and all these online, conference calls that we do. You don't have to be anymore in this physically confined space. So we can take advantage of all these changes and adapt accordingly our approach. So we can attract the talent, because talent, yes, they want to see a future, but maybe in that industry or in that sector, they want to have an impact. They can see it's a global debate. They want to make a positive contribution, but maybe they don't want to be with the same organization for life, or they don't want to do the same job for all their life. They want to have this kind of mobility and trying something else. So why not be a geologist and at the same time be a drummer with, something that you like pursuing. I had one of the guys who came to us, he wanted to be a basketball coach. And
Right.
although he lacked energy, and I could tell him that, you know what, I don't think energy is for you, like for your career. You like it as out of interest, but I strongly recommend you to go and pursue your career as a coach, like a basketball coach. And he learned a bit of technique on how to train, how to teach, how to motivate. And he's pursuing his career as a basketball coach. So why not?
Interesting. So flexibility is probably one of the levers the organization should consider more, because people, the type of people they are right now, especially the future, the talents and the future leaders, they're looking for more flexible approach when it comes to work. I take from you also, they might have a different attitude in terms of how it works. So for at least the definition of work is different. I would say it's just different than
it's not that they are lazy.
Exactly,
it's just their approach is different.
Exactly.
So you don't have to work, let's say, from 9 to 5 or even longer or this. It's just that we go back to this issue of flexibility. And maybe you are better working in the evening, coming up with fantastic model or some kind of new concept. Why not? It doesn't have to be 9 o'clock.
Yeah, totally. All right. So for the last part, I'm interested to understand, what does it mean to be, a CEO right now? I mean, you are a CEO of your own organization, which makes you more like a founder, but you're also CEO of a growing organization. What do you think are the typical challenges that CEO is facing right now in dealing with, primarily I'm interested in what we just discussed about the level of uncertainty has increased. The complexity, seems to be bigger than before. Any tips for those people? They are aspiring to become a CEO, or maybe they're a CEO and at the moment they are facing some, they are questioning themselves whether they are impactful or not. What are your ideas, suggestions, tips on that?
I cannot speak for all CEOs because you
Of
take
course.
consideration different conditions, different
And
sector.
also a different size of organization.
Yeah, but I will highlight
challenges.
maybe different challenges at different levels. So there is, when you are dealing with a market or in a sector that is more for the long term, it's not about, we're not traders, we don't deal with up and down in prices, we can comment on that. But when we're talking about investment decision, an investment in energy is not something for a day or two or a week or two. It's a long term. So you need to have a good feel about the long term. Market trends, we have a better feel of where they are heading, right? You cannot tell for sure, but you do have a better understanding. Other metrics, technical metrics, the same. But one of the biggest challenges these days is policy uncertainty. It was always a problem, but today I see more of this back and forth, especially when it comes to energy. I think I see more controversy around energy and what governments are committing to and the new instruments they are introducing, the ambiguity around those instruments, the new regulations piling on like here and there. And that creates confusion like in the market, especially when you have clients that come and say, so we're not sure we want to really pursue this in this country. So that is on where I see the most pronounced. When people tell me there is volatility, I say it's a normal process. It's a normal feature of the market. This is not really a problem. We can deal with that. But when you want to commit major capital in a certain country, you want to secure that capital, the return on the capital for many years to come. But if you cannot have this kind of security or guarantee because of governments changing policies and they are the sovereign at the end, even if you have a contract, they can revisit the contract whenever they want. That creates a major challenge for any CEO to take on the decision in the light of this kind of uncertainty. In terms of the subject itself, I give lots of media interviews and I'm always amazed how people end up, categorizing you as being either pro oil and gas or anti this or...
Yeah.
And that doesn't annoy me because I'm used to it, but I would love people to look beyond that, to understand it more, that energy sources are competing sources, and you have to understand what's happening in the various markets in order to have a good comprehensive picture. So I find that, the kind of judgment, and that can affect also the kind of people you're doing business with, because some people say, no, I don't want to work with this organization because they do A, B, and C. We don't discriminate, but there this attitude that people refuse to do business with you because they think you are taking a certain line. That's another challenge. And then internally is, of course, what we discussed earlier, accepting the changes in the priorities and needs of the younger generation. You see, how do you bring them, encourage them, motivate them to work harder, to commit for a longer period of time, but at the same time support their developments even outside your organization? So how do you maintain that kind of continuity in a fast evolving and rapidly changing environment? It's not a new challenge, but maybe today more because of energy, the nature of the sector we are talking about, climate change versus meeting our energy needs, cheap energy. All this, how do you balance all that? And this requires talent, skills, and a bit of art.
I love that. That's such a great advice. Last question.
Sorry, I talk a lot, so
No,
tell
actually,
me if we exceed our
perfect.
time.
The last question I have is more about one single consideration about mindset. So we discussed more about challenges, but if you think about succeeding today in the current scenarios, I mean, clearly your focus is on energy, but if you want to expand a little bit outside even energy, what do you think is one single important mindset shift that are required in order to succeed today as a leader? Is all about the flexibility, agility that we discussed about? It could well be. Or there is any other maybe perspective that we did not consider yet in terms of, yes, that is a kind of a shift that mentally we have to do in order to succeed in the current scenario, because it's the scenario where we are living here right now is different than where we were living even 5 years ago, given all the changes that happened, geopolitics, COVID, etc. Is there any idea about how we can train our mindset to be more successful for the future?
I mean, I think it's a very old recipe that you have to accept that uncertainty and risk-taking is part of your business and not shy away from it and be able to adapt to it. And my philosophy in life is that any minute you just deal with the future, it's like sailing in the fog.
Yes.
Yeah, you cannot wait for the fog to dissipate, but you have to continue sailing until you start seeing the other side of the lake. That's my approach to, on a personal level, on a business level, on any level. If I'm going to shy away from what could happen, what is this, what is that, of course you have scenarios, but what did COVID tell us? All of our scenarios, we have to ditch them and then start from scratch. So you have to have this readiness as well. It's not just agility or your ability to do it, but you have to be ready mentally. And of course, within your organization, you have to train your people also. Because as a leader, you may have that ability yourself, but have you passed it on to your organization?
Are you bringing your people with you or not?
Exactly. Because on your own, you'll be singing, on your own, lonely in the rain. But you need also to have your organization, everyone involved with you at the same level, understand your passion and your vision, and accept the risk-taking involved in that.
And that might not be a surprise for you to finish this episode that when I ask a similar question to Lorenzo Simonelli, that you probably know, as a CEO of Baker Hughes, one thing is, it really stuck with me when he said, to me, it's all about dealing with ambiguity. Is how can we bring our people together and be more comfortable about all the ambiguity that we are facing as, in our industry. And to me, that is such a big learning, because when people really learn to deal with ambiguity and see ambiguity as an opportunity rather than as an adversity,
exactly,
things change, because you start seeing people taking more risk, but also be much more comfortable in front of, the uncertainty they're facing. So that's
absolutely, definitely. It's ambiguity and not to be scared of it. Deal with it.
Yes.
It's a different. If I talk about mindset and attitude.
It's that.
So we can both be faced by the same thing, but one of us says, "Oh, I can see something can be done about it. Oh my goodness, what does that mean to me?" That changes the whole outcome and strategy.
Because it's all about perspective.
Yes.
If we see things that we don't normally see every single day, we started to see opportunities or possibilities in front of us where maybe we didn't see before.
But this is what opportunities are about, right? Because if they were visible to everyone, there are not any more opportunities,
exactly
right?
That's a fantastic way of saying that. Carole, thank you so much for being with me today. Where people should go if they want to know more about your work?
They can visit our website, crystalenergy.com. They can reach out on social media, on LinkedIn.
You're quite active on LinkedIn.
Yes, yes. And, any university I'm connected with, also they can reach if they want to know also about research, academia, but also business. We have an established website and they can reach us anytime.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. That was an amazing conversation, and good luck with your Crystal Energy.
Thank you very much, Andrea.